Hey, good morning, making moves, folks. So, Tim and Tim are here today, but wait, not really. I think the other Tim is about 6 hours behind, blissfully sleeping in Hawaii right now. So, we're just going to be mad and hate on him today, and have a nice little discussion with Dennis Poulsen today. So, Dennis, what's going on, man?
Hey Tim, thanks for the invite today. Happy to be here. Been watching this show. It's kind of a privilege to be on it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. It's our humble little like Tuesday morning chat where we just get on and talk about whatever comes to mind, man. So so Dennis, why don't you introduce yourself to folks, and tell everybody a little bit about who you are, what you do, and where you are.
Yeah. Hey everybody, I'm Dennis Poulsen. I am physically located in the DMV, Washington D.C. area of Northern Virginia. I've been doing real estate investing in the single family space for I think almost coming up on 20 years now, Tim. I started house hacking kind of college age and grew a single family portfolio around here. Ended up getting a real estate license to help with my flipping business in the early teens. If there's something in the single family world, I've probably tried it. Past 2 years, really been pivoting into multifamily and learning as much as I can. It's kind of where I met you guys.
Yeah.
So now, trying to just put all my effort into growing the multifamily business and learning as much as I can.
Well, very,
Hey,
very
Jessica.
cool. Jessica Bucks giving Dennis a shout out here. Yeah, you think Jessica, just curious if you're going to run into Dennis this weekend down in Florida. Um, but yeah, so let's talk about your flipping business a little bit. That's always an interesting one to me, since I did that for a little while. So how long? I mean, are you still doing flips? How long did you do them?
Stop doing the flip. So, growing single family rentals in a high cost of living in a high kind of priced area was slow, and we're always looking for ways to generate more capital to put larger down payments on properties. So we started flipping and actually did a new construction single family home as well around here, and it just it was good and it could be lucrative. Competition became very fierce, and margins didn't really outweigh the risk that you had to take for the
Yeah.
properties around here. And honestly, I think that was probably pivotal to me in terms of trying to find another avenue of investing, because single family was so transactional to me, and it was on to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next one, and you never really got to grow this thing or grow this business. The flipping business was basically just how many transactions can you do in a
Right.
year.
Right. Yeah.
That
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
so that was one of the pieces of multifamily that really kind of attracted me. Was you can put more time into it, you can really create a lot more value over a longer period of time than you can just trying to cram as many transactions as you can into a year.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on something, man, that me personally really kind of burned me out with it, right? Is I always tell people call it like kill and eat, right? Like you make the kill, you then you get to eat, right? And that's what flipping was, right? You buy something, you add the value to it, and you flip out of it, and you get that nice little chunk. And I don't know about you, but I found it extremely it's like a roller coaster, right? Like you get this high when you flip out of it, and then there's this stressful time when you're trying to get the next one done. Um, but yeah, you're right. It's very, very difficult to scale with flipping, and you're right. It's a high transaction type of thing. Um, but what's interesting? We saw over the last 2 years. I mean, even longer than that, right? 2018, things slowed down a little bit in 2020, but then 2021 and 22, we saw a lot of flipping going on in the multifamily space. Guys getting in to multifamily properties, holding them for less than a year or right out a year and getting out, like doing some value add as prices were appreciating. They were just like, I'm going to take my chunk and go. And a whole lot less holding. So So with that in mind, what's kind of your strategy in the multifamily space? Are you, hold it 2 years, get out, or are you more of like, let me build a portfolio and hold it for 5, 7, 10 years?
So I think in multifamily, it's got to be a little bit of both, right? And I think honestly, the property is probably going to dictate a lot of that strategy to you up front. Like we've taken on some smaller properties that are targeted 2-year holds because it needs that value add, and that's how you can kind of accelerate your capital. But I really want, I think my long term goal here is to get away from the transactional nature of it and find those properties that you can hold almost indefinitely. And one of the powerful pieces about multifamily is as you increase that value, you can just refi out. You're going to keep a little bit of money in the deal, but if you manage it correctly and you kind of buy right, you can continue to pull money out of your property while maintaining some sort of cash flow. And that's, I think, the ultimate maybe security or stability is getting some sort of monthly or quarterly draw to your properties, but then you can get those capital events every couple of years as you put the work into your property.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really well said. And I think, by the way, Facebook user, not sure who this is, but it says go Dennis Poulsen. So uh,
Thank you.
Dennis is definitely going, and we'll get into that too, man. We'll talk about where Dennis is going. But I think you're hitting on something there too, right? Like, and one of the guys that kind of opened my eyes up to it was Nate Barger. Nate has Burr 360, and that's a great group. If you guys haven't been there, check it out. Can't recommend it enough. But Nate came from the flipping world, and Nate still does flips. But he kind of took that same Burr strategy to the multifamily space, right? Like when people think of Burr, a lot of times they think of single family, and Nate's like, no, man, you can do that in the multifamily too. Exactly what you were just talking about. It's like, hey, go in, do the value add, tap that equity, and go buy something else, but
Right.
don't sell, right? Hold on to it. And a couple of weeks ago, I literally sat in the kitchen of one of Nate's properties where he was talking about, man, if you want to generate wealth, you want to do true wealth creation, don't sell, hold on
Yeah.
to it. Hold on to it, right? He's like, add the value, pull some equity out, make sure it still cash flows after you pull the equity out, take that equity and go do it again and do it again and do it again. He's like, dude, that is wealth creation right there. Um,
Yeah.
and I think we missed a lot of that over the last few years, right? Like we got so transactional, even with multifamily, of like, oh man, I made $100,000, let me grab it and go.
Yeah.
Um,
Because it was so easy, that
yeah,
equity build was just apparent everywhere, and I think a lot of people got caught in that frenzy of just trying to take as much as they can and put it into something else because then you can multiply it more. But
right.
I think for me that's such a short-sighted kind of vision that a lot of the multifamily operators that I talk to, they talk about this, wanting to leave a legacy and wanting to build that kind of generational wealth. And that's, like you're saying, you can't sell all your properties if that's what you want to do. You have to keep something to yourself
Yeah.
and just get partners with that same vision and
Yeah.
work on that over time.
Yeah, and right, it makes it's a little bit harder to do that when you're doing syndications all the time, right?
Yeah,
It's hard to
definitely.
get 20 investors to all agree to, hey, we're going to hold this for 10 years. We're going to leave some amount of equity tied up in this thing for 10 years.
Yeah,
That's a hard pitch sometimes, but where you were talking about a blend, right? So blend based on the asset where it sits. Maybe you hold it for 2, maybe you hold it for 10, depending on a couple of factors. Another factor that might be, you also do a blend of syndications and JVs, right? Like you
yeah,
find a partner, like you and me, for instance. Hey, Dennis, I got 200 grand. Dennis, you got 200 grand. Let's go find a, a $1.5 million property that you and I can buy and just sit on, right?
yeah,
Um, and you're starting to see more people go back to that, right? You're starting to see still doing syndications, but let's also, create some liquidity for ourselves so that we can go in with, a smaller, more condensed team. Um,
yeah. And that kind of brings up another kind of difference between the single family space and the multifamily space. I think one of the challenges I ran into is exactly what you're saying. Like you're doing everything yourself in the single family space. it's a lot tougher to find somebody, hey, you want to go buy this one house with me and
Right.
hold it for the next 10 years. I think in the multifamily space, it's a lot more team effort and a lot more collaboration to do those kinds of long hold transactions. And that was a real big eye opener for me
Yeah.
when moving out of single family.
Yeah, so speaking of that, you kind of tossed me a softball there, and this is unplanned, guys. But go Dennis Poulsen, where are you going? Don't talk about anything specific. I think you got a couple of things early in the process, so don't want to like force you into a 506C here. So, but uh, you've met some partners that you've done a deal with in the past, and you guys are expanding. You got some other things going on right now. So, can you kind of talk about like, why these partners, why these deals, things like that? Like, what's made you kind of nail down, this particular group?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of like-minded individuals, right? I think you know, joining some certain mastermind groups and some coaching programs, you meet a lot of people who are in the same place that you are, or working to be in the same place that you want to be. So yeah, that's going on 8 months now. We've been operating a deal together with two other partners, and they was kind enough to invite me to join them on another one. And it's in a different market, but to go back to what we were saying earlier, you got to diversify a little bit. This new deal that's coming up is a lot more cash flow heavy than it is kind of an appreciation play. So
Yeah.
trying to diversify into those, like we're talking about, a longer term hold with some more consistent cash flow rather than just trying to push the value and get out.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point because yeah, and guys, I'm familiar with what he's talking about here. But hey, real quick, hey, good morning, EK. How's it going, man? Good to see you. Um, But, yeah, I think that's a real big key, and like you talked about, kinda doing a deal with those guys and kinda seeing how their priorities align, right? That's huge. It's absolutely huge. I spent better part of 3 days 2 weeks ago basically talking to folks who were just getting started about, hey, you may partner with somebody, but it may be a while before you decide to like really partner with somebody, like truly create an enterprise together. For instance, one of the examples I gave is Tim and Tim. I think we've done something like 12 deals, 14, some I forgot how many deals we've done as basically separate entities working together, right? We have just recently created an entity together where we are truly in business together. And that's one of the things that we kind of recommend is like, hey, do a deal together. Don't start a business together. Do a deal together. And you've done that with these guys on the one property, and they seem to like what you do,
Yeah.
and so they've invited you on the other. So with that in mind, we always talk about superpowers, right? And making moves. We talk about what's your superpower. So with this group, what do you kind of bring to the table with these guys?
I think my superpower, especially in this group, is organizational organization, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, yeah,
Having been through the purchase process and kind of managing a lot of the operations or ongoing operations of ownership, I think that's where my skills kind of blend into naturally. Financial analysis and operations, because I've been self-managing all of my single family portfolio, and granted, multifamily is a different scale, but it's the same kind of principles. So just making sure the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed from contract to close, and then staying on top of the ongoing operations and the properties. Making sure that they are hitting the metrics that you need them to meet,
yeah.
is where a lot of my strengths are coming in.
Yeah, and by the way, guys, I can like completely back Dennis up on that. Dennis, we can talk about this one since we can talk about a blend of single family and multifamily, right? So,
Yeah,
guys,
we
like
can.
Dennis and I did a deal together last year, closed on in what, November? Um,
November, yeah.
yeah, and it's in Boone, North Carolina. Great deal. Um, but man, I was swamped during that time, and Dennis 100% did exactly what he said. He came in, he was organized, he was super organized. He stayed on top of things through the transition and through the buying process, and and really kind of honestly, if I'm being transparent here, really kind of picked up where I was dropping the ball, where I was being a little bit slack because I had, well, not slack, but I wasn't, I didn't have the time to do everything. I think I had what, three things going on at that time.
That that was a very hectic time for you. But I will say, I mean, anytime I ran into a roadblock or just kind of needed some advice, I mean, you were always right there and available. So
Yeah.
don't sell yourself short here.
Yeah, but but that attention to detail, man, like getting those financials, looking into them, then coming to me and saying, "Hey, I'm seeing something that's a little bit of a concern, or seeing something I'm not quite sure of." That was huge, and that was really critical for moving us down the path there and getting to a closing. And that wasn't the easiest closing in the world either.
No, it was not.
It was, and guys, the deal we're talking about, yeah, EK, man, I love Boone too, man. I love this deal in Boone. But that deal we're talking about, guys, it was 19 single family homes, brand new, all in the same area. And they were basically build to rent. Build to rent, which is, you see a lot of institutional companies doing this, and this kind of comes back into a space that Dennis and I both have some experience, right? They're single families grouped together like a multifamily, but at the end of the day, they're all separate buildings, right? It's a bunch of single family separate homes, and they're all next door to each other. But the cool thing is, man, I don't know about you, Dennis, but for me, it kind of opened my eyes into like why this build to rent thing is so awesome. Um,
Yeah,
and part of that is people like to have a house, but the other thing too is these things are brand new, and the expense ratio on these things is ridiculously low right now.
yeah.
I mean, they are
And
just
having control over the entire neighborhood like that is also a huge value add for the residents.
right.
We have the flexibility to do anything there.
Yeah. Yeah, and, so it's exactly that whole piece of, hey, these are single family homes, but they're really, really grouped together and built like multifamily.
Hmm.
Like Dennis said, like, we can add amenities to the whole neighborhood. We don't have to go to an HOA and say, "Can we put this in?" We own the HOA. So we literally do, guys. We own the HOA. But, that's a great property, and it starts to make you understand why the institutional guys are moving into that build to rent space more and more and more. Um, it's a very attractive spot. Um, so Dennis, what's next, man? What do you got going on other than this new deal you guys got going? And what do you think after that?
Yeah, so we're kicking off DD here on New Deal. Looking at some more. I think I'm trying to pivot into this space full time. I think is kind of the next big step for me. You know, I, I've been reading a lot and kind of doing a lot. 'Cause, I mean, you and I have had some mindset conversations about when is the right time to pull the ripcord. I think that's going to be the next big step for me is is putting all of my attention into this and seeing where it goes and how large we can grow.
Yeah, yeah, that's a hard one, man. That whole mindset thing, and it's funny that you mentioned that because I literally was having that same conversation this morning. And a guy that we use for some of our renovations and stuff. I've been talking to him about that. Like, hey, I think it's time. You're obviously doing pretty well with this, but you need to be able to scale to kind of service the guys doing what we
Yeah.
do. I think it might be time. So where do you think you are kind of along that path? Do you think you're closer or further away, or and then two, two-part question here. How long have you been working towards that?
Man, that's a tough a tough question. I've been working towards it. I could argue that I've been working towards this since I first started investing in real estate. I think really, really kind of taking it seriously and making that plan and that action step was probably over the last 2 years, maybe 3 years.
Yeah.
And it's such a moving target, and something that I struggle with is kind of like we were talking earlier about having that consistent security of properties. And it's the same thing with a job. It's a consistent security of a paycheck. um, but I think it's my business is getting to the point where the time investment is costing me more than it's making me.
Right.
And that's been the mental struggle over the past couple of months specifically. So I think maybe a more pointed answer to your question is imminently. I
And
hope it
it's
is imminently.
yeah, that's always kind of a loaded question, right?
Yeah.
I remember when I was coming up on my imminent moment. I thought it was going to be like December, right? And then something came up and it moved to February, and then something came up and it moved to April. Now I finally did
Mhm.
it in April, but there's what is that? Like a 6 month run, 5 month run
Yeah.
there, where and to your point, and the reason I asked you like when did you start is I mentioned I was around a bunch of folks that are just kind of now getting into it, and I think it's always good to lay that realistic expectation out there because sometimes I think what people see is the success and it feels instant, right? Like they don't
Oh yeah.
they don't hear about Tim Vest or Tim Vitale or Dennis Poulsen or they don't hear about any of us until we leave the job or we've got 500 units or something like that, right?
Right.
They don't see that this was a plan that you started putting in place in 2016, um, and you started making consistent steps toward that day, right? Um, so they get
Yeah.
into it and 3 months in, 4 months in, they don't feel like they've made substantial progress, and they get frustrated. Um,
It's tough, and it is a risk. And like you're saying, a lot of people, a lot of people that I kind of came into this business world and looked at, they had already taken the risk and already succeeded. But you don't. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, right?
no,
It is difficult. It is tough to to build up that business and to be in a place where you can consider that. And I think it comes down to your personal risk tolerance, right? Like I've had conversations with others who they want to completely replace their income before they make the jump, and then I kind of lean in this way, but it's there are others who have a number of months to make it work.
yeah,
Is it 8 months? Is it 14 months? How long of a runway do you need to feel confident given your own personal risk tolerance to make the jump? And that's a very personal decision.
yeah.
But at some point you got to do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And if and I'll share this and he's shared it before, so I know he wouldn't mind, but like Vitali and I handled it completely different, right? He he said, I'm done. I'm done with my W-2. I'm out. And I don't think he owned anything at the time. Maybe one, I think he had one condo. And he basically said, "Man, I got a 14-month runway. And if I can't get to where I need to be to at least pay my bills in 14 months, then so be it, right? You
Right.
know, I didn't go that approach, right? I have a wife, I have a daughter. I completely said I need to be here before I can take that leap, right? I need to have consistent income or some sort of, you know, nest egg sitting there that gives me much more than 14 months um, before I'm comfortable making that move. And like you said, his wasn't right or wrong. Mine wasn't right or wrong. What you're talking about isn't right or wrong. It's a very, very personal decision. And, it has to be with what you feel good about. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And EK, yeah, man, I know it's speaking to you. You and I have talked about this a little bit. So, it's crazy how many people are in this space. Right. But you mentioned it's not all sunshine and roses, and I completely agree. In fact, I don't know if you guys saw my post today about the unit before and after.
I saw it.
In full disclosure, Dennis knows about that one because that's another deal he and I are in together. And I mean, you want to talk about a property that has not been sunshine and roses. Now we're putting some sunshine on it, right? Um,
Trying to. Yeah, I think we're knock on wood here, turning the corner here finally. It's been tough. It's been a lot of time. It's been a lot of effort. It's been a lot of money. But you keep going back to this comment, and I probably said it to you more times than I want to admit, but it's you take care of your properties, and at some point they will start taking care of you. And hopefully we're kind of turning that corner here now.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my own mentors, shout out to Mike Ely. He has a nice little saying that I like, which is appreciate your properties and they will appreciate. Right.
Right.
Um, and this is a really good example of that because previous ownership has a history of not appreciating their properties. And we uncovered a lot of that, right? Like it wasn't just the tenant and the way they treated the property. It's once we got in there, we were like, man, there's these floors don't feel right. We pulled that up and there was years of neglect that previous ownership had just covered right up.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't get that. And see, this is one reason why I like working with Dennis because I know Dennis doesn't get that either. It's like, why would you treat something that pays you, that puts money in your pocket? Why would you do anything less than treat it well?
Right.
Um, and that goes back to what Mike says.
It's almost more effort to do the wrong thing here. It's
Yeah,
you're doing cosmetic work, you're doing repairs anyway. Do it right.
yeah,
It's something. Yeah, we've had conversations. I will never understand it.
yeah. No, me neither. Because it's a snowball effect, right? It's a snowball effect. You don't treat it right, your tenants start to notice you don't treat it right, so they don't treat it right, and then you end up with a unit that looks like that one.
Yeah.
That ultimately they don't pay. You got to evict them. That costs you money. Then you got to go in and you spend more on renovations and turns, right? So that just costs you money. At the end of the day, it's to me in my mind, it's a lose lose. I don't get the scenario. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. I agree with you.
yeah. So, and guys, that's one reason why I really like working with Dennis is it's kind of a similar mindset there, right? Not only does he make sure that he picks up your slack when when you got too much going on, but I think Dennis truly has an understanding of how you should operate these things. Um, and that's huge. That is absolutely
Yeah.
huge with a
Thank you for
partner.
saying that, Tim. I appreciate that. I mean, your opinion is very valuable to me. I appreciate you saying
Yeah, we're all gonna just pat each other on the back here this morning.
that.
So, man, what do you? What's up over the next 3 months? I know you got the stuff going on. With these other deals you got going on. What markets are you kind of focusing on right now?
Yeah. I think I love the Carolinas. I know you share that sentiment. I think so. So still putting in a lot of effort to build out those relationships and just intimately know those markets.
Hmm.
Always networking, but also trying to expand a little bit. I think Carolina is a very specific market, and like I kind of mentioned earlier, that the next deal is a little bit more geared towards cash flow, and maybe that's me trying to hedge a little bit of that risk we talked about earlier, but just trying to devote more time, really just kind of study this craft and be as involved as I can, and honestly, I think it's getting to the point where I'm in a position to kind of help other people. I'll share a general story. A older college buddy of mine reached out, and he was kind of in that running a pretty successful single family wholesaling business, and wanted to learn this. And we've spent countless hours and conversations just talking about the differences between what he's doing and where he wants to go. And now he's kind of making those steps. So it's kind of a validating moment for me is that they're able to just kind of bridge that gap and start working towards what they want to do. And that comes back to one of the pieces of multifamily that I like the most is that it's not just you running this race, that you can bring so many people along for the ride with you. And there's, coming from a place of abundance, there is enough to go around, and
Oh yeah,
everybody can get what they want out of it.
yeah, 100%. And that's and guys, Dennis just mentioned it, man. The place of abundance, knowing that there's just plenty out there, there's plenty to be had, and he's 100% right. Um, it's always amazing to me, and folks are like, "How did you find all these deals?" And I'm like, "Man, there's tons of deals out there. Like,
Yeah.
there's tons of deals." And I'm not trying to belittle, anybody that's struggling to find one, but there are, it's there's plenty out there to be had, and there's plenty out there to share, right? Um,
Yeah.
and I love the fact you're like helping out, man. Like, I think there's, Tim and I like to say it, right? Like, no matter where you are in your journey, there's someone that could learn something from you, right? In fact, that's how that was the basis for making moves. Is we got into this, and a lot of guys we were working with had been doing this for 20 something years, and I think they had forgotten how intimidating that first deal could be, right?
Yeah.
That first time you go get a $5 million property under contract, man, that's intimidating. That's really intimidating. And there, I know when I was doing my first one, I was like, it felt stressful to close on something like that.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, so finding somebody that's not 20 years removed from that first $1 million deal, I think sometimes that's the guy you want to connect with on your first one, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that comes down to just your network is so valuable, and
Yeah,
you're able to find deals, you're able to find partners, you're able to find mentors all through networking, and it's just
yeah,
be careful with the people that you're talking to, but if you find the right group and the right community, I mean, my own multifamily growth is only to the fact that I found the right people to help me, and they were
yeah.
willing to help, and they're happy to do it. It's so important to find the right people and people that are sharing values and kind of want to go in the same direction that you are.
Yeah, man, well said, well said. And I think that's a good way to wrap this one up. But hey, Dennis, real quick, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me here on Facebook. Send me a DM. I don't know if there's a chat. I can put my phone number. Feel free to call me. But yeah, again, looking forward to networking with everybody and sharing any value I can. And Tim, thank you so much for the invitation. As definitely out of my comfort zone, but I always appreciate our conversations.
Hey, man, I always like talking with you. And hey, I'm only here because Vitali pushed me to get out of my comfort zone. So happy to return the favor to somebody else. But
Yeah,
hey,
appreciate it.
guys, have a great week, Dennis. Great talking to you. I'm sure we'll be talking again soon. And everybody, keep making moves. Take care.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Bye.